how to succeed in internal interviews for senior role. And today again, I'm joined with my friend Chris.
Thank you for asking me back.
You're more than welcome. Chris actually has 3 jobs. I wanted Chris to introduce himself again for you to understand his background, where he's coming from, and really how we can add value together in terms of helping you understand how to succeed in internal interviews for senior roles.
My first job and main job is I run a consulting business called Purpose-Led Performance. I founded it and I'm the CEO. I'm also the co-founder of something called the Purpose Collective, which is an international community of leaders, and it's all focused about making business better. And then my third role and third hat is I work with Birmingham Tech, who are the organisers of Birmingham Tech Week, and I'm the scale-up lead. So that's what I do now, Sanya. But I guess my relevance to this topic today is previously I have worked as a senior executive, worked as a CEO, as a managing director of businesses ranging from sort of 40, 50 million revenue right up to 170 million. I've had a fair degree of experience in terms of being part of interviews and also interviewing people for senior roles.
You are going to take us through 2 perspectives.
Yep.
One perspective is what really worked for Chris to secure these internal promotions and external promotions. How did he become actually a senior leader? And then a second perspective, which is really important, is to how he then interviews as a senior leader for these roles as well. In terms of your kind of journey, Chris, how many interviews have you had so far?
First business I joined in a frontline role. I was there for 10 years and I did 6 different jobs over those 10 years. I went from frontline to deputy CEO. So I had 5 promotions in 6.5 years. So that's 6 interviews. I interviewed for a managing director role, interviewed for a couple of CEO roles. So I've had 9 successful interviews in the last 19 years. Had 1 unsuccessful interview. So I've not got 100% success rate, but I've got 90% success rate.
That's
so
great,
probably not too bad.
We will come on to what you look for when you are interviewing people, but to start with your approach as to how did you approach these senior roles interviews as an internal candidate?
People approach interviews and getting jobs like it's a transactional process. There is an application, there's some interview questions. And if you think about how much time you spend at work, if you think about what a big part of your life it is, people actually put far too little focus and far too little time into really thinking about where they want to be. You know, if you think about how much time people spend choosing a new car, choosing a new handbag, choosing a holiday, choosing a new piece of electronic kit. So we're on YouTube. You know, how many videos are there on YouTube about how to select the best phone? And yet when it comes to a job where you spend 40 hours a week on average, my view is actually you should approach it like you're building a new relationship, that you're looking for your next soulmate. So that's kind of my overriding view, is don't see it as a transactional process. See it as a relationship that you really want to build that's going to be super important for your life. I work a lot with senior leaders at the moment, and it's only recently, so several of the leaders I've been working for have been going for big promotions, and it was through speaking to them that I realized how I approached interviews was not necessarily how they approached interviews. It's only through those coaching relationships recently where I'm like, okay, and I've shared this approach. I got great feedback on it, so I thought, why don't we share it?
Absolutely.
First step, why do you want this job? I would always say, whenever I've gone for those internal jobs, the first thing that I've thought about when a new job has come out and I've looked at it is, does it excite me? Does it immediately spark me thinking, if I could do that job, this is what I'd do? Particularly with internal roles, you understand often about these roles. You're probably working in that team or you're working closely with that team. I guess the bigger companies you might not. I think a lot of people focus on what's it going to pay me and what's the job title going to be. I would call these extrinsic benefits. What's in it for me, as opposed to the intrinsic benefits. What is it about this job that really is going to fulfill me and excite me? And the thing is, when you go in with that level, and we were talking about this earlier, when you go in with that level of excitement and motivation, it shines through when people interview you. They really can tell the difference between somebody who cares and is excited, between somebody who wants the job, but they want it because it's going to give them more money. Don't focus on what the job is going to give you. Focus on how the job is going to excite you. Step 2, I used to call it daydream, but actually I've come to realize that what I was doing was visualizing. Let me explain. Having seen an opportunity for an internal promotion, my immediate thought, as I said, was, oh, does this excite me? My next step, I wouldn't spend time reading the job specification or the job description. I would actually spend time going into a deep daydream or a deep visualization. I would really start to think, okay, let's imagine that I'm going to start that job on Monday. What would I do? What would I do on my first day? What would I do in my first week? What would I do in my first month? What would I want to achieve in that first month? And I'd really go deep into thinking through, imagining myself into that role. Reading up on neuroscience recently and listening to various podcasts, I realized what I was doing is I was visualizing myself in that role. And what's quite interesting about the neuroscience of visualization, so Olympic athletes will talk about visualization. Now, often people think what they're visualizing is them standing on the podium or then winning. But actually, from the studies that I've done or listened to, often what people are visualizing is the process they're living through. So if it's a race, how are they going to run that race? A really famous example of Michael Phelps had done a visualization of how he would swim a race if his goggles filled with water. And that happened, I think it was in the Beijing Olympics, that his goggles in the final actually filled with water. And as opposed to panicking or kind of thinking, oh no, he just automatically knew because he'd been there already. And this is where the neuroscience is really interesting about the power of visualization, because your brain is not very good at distinguishing between something that actually happened and something that you've just done a detailed visualization of it happening. The advantage I had is I'd already done that role for 6 months in my mind, in detail, whereas other people were trying to figure out what do they want me to say in response to this question? And the difference is huge.
It's not an exam.
It's not an exam, which actually leads us on to step 3. An interview is like an election. It is not like an exam. So let me explain this. And even, coaching some of the senior leaders I've been working with recently, I've got a very distinct memory. It's very recent. The person I was working with was like, what do they want me to say? What is the answer? And I said, it's not about the answer they want, it's about the answer you've got. Don't worry about what they want. And this is why I shared the metaphor that an interview is like an exam. If you see it as like an exam, there is the right answer and it's about meeting what the examiner wants. If it's like an election, think about an election. So I want to be the president of Solihull, which is where we're sat at the moment. There isn't a president of Solihull, but if there was one, I would want to be elected. What happens in an election? So when you stand for president, what you're selling is your big vision, what you stand for and what your goal is for the country, the company, the organization, whatever you're going to be elected for. So you're selling, first of all, an exciting vision. And then secondly, you have a manifesto. And that manifesto is full of detailed policies about how you are going to achieve that vision. And people vote for you if your vision and if what you stand for resonates with them and it excites them and they want to see that happen. And they vote for you if they think your policies are credible and they think that they will work to deliver that vision. And going into an interview, that's what you're sort of pitching. This is my vision. This is what we want to achieve. These are the steps on the way. And again, before the session, we were talking about when you would approach a interview in this way, an interview is not a one-way street. An interview is a two-way street. You are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And your interview is saying, this is my vision. These are my values. This is what I stand for. This is how I will approach it. And if that resonates with them, then you are the right person for that company, for that job, and you get the job. If it doesn't, it's not the right place for you because their vision's not aligned. Exactly. The way they do things is not aligned. Approach it like an election, not like an exam. The final step is really sharing about the day of the interview. After you've really spent a good amount of time visualizing yourself in the role, ask yourself, are you excited and do you have a plan? Because it's the plan which then goes into election, but then you've actually got to perform on the day of the interview. So here's my tip for approaching interviews. I would say treat it like it's a cup final, or treat it like it's a performance, like you're singing on stage. The point is, it's an important day and you have to perform at your best. And if it's a cup final, you should be excited about it. If you're about to do a concert and perform for people, you should be excited about it. Sure, you're going to be nervous. That's entirely natural, but you've got to feel the excitement and be up for it. And then how do I get myself into that mind state?
What works for you? Yes, you mentioned this. This is very important.
So I would always have a haircut the day before an interview. It sounds like a strange thing, but I would always go in and make sure my hair had just been done. Wear your best suit and your best shoes. First of all, do stuff that makes you feel good about yourself. But the other stuff that I would do then is I would make sure I booked time out in my diary for the interview. Traveling to the interview, I would be listening to music that filled me with energy and made me feel good, all of my favorite songs. And then before the interview, I would go for a big walk. And physically, when I went for that walk, I would be looking up, hopefully it's sunny. I would have my head up, looking about, shoulders back, and I would be striding, Sanya. I wouldn't be strolling or ambling. I would be walking with confidence. And I'd be thinking back and revisiting that daydream. And that meant that when I arrived in that interview, when I first walked into that room, I was arriving excited, ready for it, with a great energy, because the energy right at the very beginning that you come in is super important.
The part 2 of this video will be around what Chris is looking for when he's interviewing senior people. How many have you interviewed so far? What have you observed? What's the gaps or trends you've observed as well in all these performances, if you like? And what do we need to be mindful of as well as candidates and as applicants when we go for these kind of interviews from an assessor point of view?
So over my career, I've probably interviewed, Sanya, 300 or 400 people. Loads of internal interviews, loads of external interviews as well. And then when I was a managing director, when I was a CEO, interviews to appoint people to my senior team. So I've probably interviewed at least 40 to 50 people for senior roles as well, sort of exec level roles and next level down. Here's the insight from the interviewer side of the table. You want the person on the other side of the table to succeed. You want them to be good, to be amazing. You don't want anybody to bomb out. That's the key thing. The interviewers want you to succeed. Now, nerves are natural in interviews. We can all get nervous, but as I shared, if you treat it like a cup final, those nerves, see those as a positive part of the process. But so when I'm interviewing people, and I'll relate this back to the steps really, I want somebody. So we're all actually slightly selfish. When somebody is coming for a job on my team, in my organization, I want them to tell me how special we are. Really. It's a little bit like, I guess, if you're dating, you want the date to compliment you. You don't want them to say how great they are and spend all the time talking about how great they are. You want them to feel that they really like you. So, in terms of that step 1, why do you want that job? The people who are really focused on what's in it for them, it's the transactional, that's all about the money or the job title, or this will help me get further on, it'll look great on my CV. You sort of think, but what about us? Well, aren't we really wonderful? Don't you come and want to work for me and work for this business because we're so exciting? So again, going back to that step 1 where I said, why do you want this job? And the intrinsic, I want somebody who's going to be excited and energetic and enthusiastic. I want somebody who's going to excite me, and I kind of think, I would love to see this person in the role. People who are speaking to me on a level showing that they've really thought through, they really understand in a real way the role, makes such a difference from somebody who is trying to figure out what answer you want them to give. It's such a difference. You're having a conversation on a level as equals. But then again, this is about senior roles. I don't want somebody who's going to come in and be submissive and subservient and, I will do whatever you want me to do. Well, actually, personally, I'm looking for people who can demonstrate their thinking, their views, their opinions. I want somebody who can really do something better than I can. Because, actually, as a CEO, I'm, not really good at many things. I'm a generalist. Whereas actually my finance director, my HR director, my business development director, they're all better than me at what they do. And I want that to come through, and I want that expertise to shine through. there's nothing worse than being in an interview and seeing people really struggle to try and, not being themselves, not being authentic. And that comes down to approaching it like an exam. If it's like an exam, it's what you want them to say. Whereas actually in real life, I want to see the authentic person. I want to see their ideas. I want to be excited by their vision. And then the last point about, treating it like a cup final, they present themselves and they're confident and they're energetic and they're smiley. Makes you smile. I'm sat there thinking, I'm going to work with this person every day. I want to work with people who are, great to be around. Different companies will interview in different ways. Public sector will interview differently to private sector. But I think whoever is there is a person and they want to really be excited about the prospect of working with you and they want you to succeed.
I also wanted to make a point for us when we get disheartened, when we don't get these jobs. It probably wasn't meant to be for the right reasons. It probably wouldn't work out in the longer term. Maybe you would get the job and then in 6 months' time you would regret it. These things happen. Actually, I have worked with so many people who joined our teams and left within 3 months because they felt actually this is not for me. They somehow managed to get the job offer, but it didn't work out. So I think what I've learned as well is not to get disheartened when I don't get job offers. I often reflect on it and think, actually, on reflection, I don't think this place was the right for me, or the team wasn't really right for me. And that's something I really wanted to get across.
If the job is not right for you, not getting it is a success, not a failure.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
And if you approach it in an authentic way, where you really share your views, then if it doesn't align with the organization you're going to work with, then
it doesn't.
It's right for both parties that you don't get together.
Thank you for sharing all these tips. This is very important to understand from a practical point of view what we need to do to prepare properly for these kind of interviews. And little steps on the day as well definitely should guarantee a high success rate, if you like, in terms of your performance, and then eventually whether they decide to shortlist you further or whether they decide to offer you the job. So in terms of next steps, we will do a second video which will focus on external interviews for external senior roles. So see you in the next video.
Thank you, Sanya, for having me on the video, and thank you everybody, and
bye for now.
Bye for now.